Have you ever really stopped to think about where everything around you comes from? I mean, the screen you're looking at right now, the chair you're sitting in, the building you're in, it all had to start somewhere. Today, we're going to dig deep, literally, into mining to see how we pull the raw materials for our entire world right out of the ground. And the whole story really kicks off with a simple question.
So, think about it for a second. You've got this super high-tech gadget in your pocket, and then you have the house you live in. They couldn't seem more different, right? But what's the one thing that connects them at their most basic level? Believe it or not, they both started out as plain old rocks. That's right. The metal, the glass in your phone, the concrete in your walls, every bit of it was pulled from the earth as rocks and minerals. That's the starting point for pretty much everything we make. Okay, so let's break that down a bit. What exactly are these materials? You might just think of rocks for building stuff, but you'd be amazed. You can find them in everything from the food on your plate to the giant furnaces that make steel. I mean, rocks are the literal foundation of our civilization. We use them for the concrete in our cities and the steel in our cars, obviously, but it goes so much deeper than that. We crush them up to make fertilizers to grow our food. We even use them to help clean and purify the metals we build with. They're just everywhere. Now, minerals kind of break down into two big families. First, you've got the metallics. This is the stuff that gives us iron for buildings, the copper for all our electrical wiring, and yeah, even the gold inside our electronics. But the non-metallics are just as important. They give us everything from industrial chemicals like sulfur to phosphates for farming and, of course, beautiful things like gemstones. All right, so we know we need all this stuff, but how in the world do we find it? It's not like you can just walk outside and trip over a giant deposit of copper. Finding these minerals is basically a massive, high-tech, global treasure hunt that uses everything from old-school detective work to literal eyes in the sky. So this hunt really has two main stages. The first is what you'd probably picture, old-fashioned prospecting. You have geologists with boots on the ground, hiking around, physically looking at rocks and searching for clues. But the second step is straight out of a spy movie. It's called remote sensing, where we use powerful satellites orbiting the Earth to scan the surface and pinpoint potential hotspots from space. But here's the thing, finding a deposit is really just the beginning. Just because you found a little bit of gold doesn't mean you've actually struck gold. Now comes the really important part, a whole lot of math and science to figure out if it's actually worth digging up. This is called resource evaluation, and it's where the geologists and the economists have to get on the same page. They take tons of rock samples to figure out the quality of the mineral, how big the deposit is, all to answer the million-dollar, or more like billion-dollar question. Is there enough valuable stuff down there to make this whole thing worthwhile? And all that analysis boils down to a pretty simple yes or no. If it makes economic sense to mine, it gets classified as a mineral reserve. But if the quality is too low or it's just too expensive and difficult to get to, it stays right where it is in the ground. The whole project just stops right there. So once a reserve gets the green light, the real work begins, actually getting it out of the ground. And generally speaking, there are two major ways we do this. Which one you choose depends entirely on one thing, how deep the treasure is buried. The two main methods are really polar opposites. On the one hand, you have surface mining, which is all about peeling back the layers of the earth from the top down. And on the other hand, you have subsurface mining, which is about tunneling deep into the planet to get at the resources from the inside. Surface mining is the go-to when the minerals are relatively close to the top. First, you have to clear away all the soil and rock that's sitting on top of the deposit. That's called the overburden. Then, miners start digging down, carving out these huge layers that create a pit shaped like a giant staircase. Those steps are actually called benches. But what if the good stuff is buried way, way down? Well, then you have to go in after it. That's subsurface mining. It's all about creating this network of tunnels. You might dig a horizontal tunnel, called an adit, straight into the side of a mountain. Or you might sink a vertical tunnel, called a shaft, thousands of feet straight down to reach the deposit. So, we've found the minerals, and we know how to get them out. You'd think that's it, right? But deciding to actually open a mine is one of the most complicated things a company can do. The digging part is just one piece of a much, much bigger and more complicated puzzle. Yeah, opening a mine is this huge calculation. You got the insane upfront costs to think about, and whether people even want to buy the mineral you're digging up. But then you have to weigh all that against the real-world consequences, you know? What's the impact on the environment? What happens to the local plants and animals? What about pollution? Every single one of these things has to be carefully considered before a single shovel ever hits the dirt. And that kind of leaves us with this final really big thought. Look, there's no question we need mining. Our entire modern world, from our homes to our hospitals to our phones, is built on it. The real question we have to keep asking ourselves is, what's the right balance? How do we get what we need from the ground without causing irreparable harm? What is the right price to pay?